the best 18 mastering plugins I've collected over 10 years. Total retail price, $2,269 and I'm going to rank these on a tier list, show you how I use some of them in a session. What's worked for me might not work for you, vice versa, but what I do know is that it's going to be worth smashing the like button and subscribing for. Let's get started. A big thank you to Companion, the artist, and the producer, Zach Golden, who's allowed me to use this session, which I did for them. So let's get started. TDR Kotelnikov, Daily Driver. Now, guess what? This is absolutely free, and here is exactly how I set up a session using it. First things first, in the spectral editor on Audio Editor, and I like to find the lowest fundamental of the mix, and there's a very specific reason why, and I think this one's around 25 Hertz or 20 Hertz-ish. Yeah, a little bit higher, there we are. On that note, it's around 20 Hertz, and the reason is I have a series of presets that I've created here. So I'll go 20 Hertz here, and those attack and release times are based on making sure the compressor doesn't move faster at any point than one full revolution of the lowest fundamental frequency in the mix. You're probably asking, that's a little bit crazy, and it is, because this isn't ever the setting I end up finishing up on, it's just my starting point. And the reason why is because if the compressor moves faster then the speed it takes one revolution of the lowest frequency to happen is it starts introducing harmonics, or it can start introducing harmonics. There's a little bit more science behind it than just that, but this is my starting point. And then I can adjust the attack and release time accordingly to pocket it, to make, if I want something a little bit more aggressive sounding, a little bit more controlling, I can do that. If I want something a bit more transparent, I can do that as well with this. Now, there are just some times when I don't need the compression. I just back the threshold off all the way, so it's not in, but it's always in my chain just in case I find maybe for one particular section I need to automate the threshold in just to control things and then back it off again. The Acustica Diamond Dynamic Saturator, and it definitely secures on the B tier. I love using it when I come across a mix that's a bit too warm or rounded in the low end and I want to add some serious punch, especially with dance tracks. I want things to smack you nice and hard, both in the kick and the snare. You can try to do that with EQ, and sometimes you can achieve it. But often if you're trying to carve things out with an EQ, you can lose some of the flavor, the original vibe of the mix, and it just isn't good. You can't have that. I use it specifically here, okay? I used it on this session here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it before and after. This is an already great mix. It was a little bit on the warmer side. I want a little bit more smack, and we'll have a listen. Now, the two presets I use is either the factory preset Master Bus or this Luca preset I created based on the settings he generously shared with me in a chat I had with him. The video is in the description below, and it just makes everything smack and pop out. Take a listen to this before and after. Now, the Ozone Maximizer. The Ozone Suite is seriously packed with awesome modules, but I'm going to be talking about the Maximizer because, trust me, it's next level. It is S-tier life-changing because the IRC algorithm they've got going on here makes it super flexible as a limiter and really user-friendly. It doesn't have a million settings to try and navigate through. What you see is what you get. Now, I use the transient mode more than often because the low end tends to just extend a little bit more in this mode. But let me break it down for you how the IRC or intelligent release controls work really quickly. The independent release control pattern that sets the stage for this limit runs multiple attack and release times simultaneously. And then it measures and scores each one based on how much distortion they create compared to a psychoacoustic masking threshold. It's mind-blowing, and if you want a deep dive into all the technical details, I've got another video where I explain the whole patent page by page, detail by detail, and I'll drop a link to that in the description below. But for now, take a listen to this. Now, I have to talk about the Vertigo VSC2 compressor, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's landing in the D tier rank for me. It's meh. Now, don't get me wrong, when this bad boy used to reside on my master bus, I loved it, and I used to usually have the ratio set to soft, attack to 30, sidechain filter 60 Hz, and it is a faithful emulation of the analog unit. It served on my master bus for many years actually, but there's sort of a problem with this. It's a one-trick pony, and in the world of mastering in 2023, I need something more flexible. That's why the TDR Katalnikov is the daily driver. It works, it's good when the mix is right for it. I'm not really sure much what mixes work with this anymore because I haven't used it in quite a while. It's just one of the plugins I had. It had to come on the list because I wanted to share my experience with it. Actually, you know where I still use this? When I'm actually mixing. When I'm mixing, it's on my bus just as a sort of vibe check to mixing to. But otherwise, the TDR Katalnikov takes the cake for mastering compressors in comparison to the VSC2. Oof. The Baselane Pro, the Secret Fairy Dust. This plugin here is the secret fairy dust that has my clients going, I don't know what you did, but I love the low-end sounds. Now, trust me, it's an absolute gem and falls directly into the B tier of greatness. Now, let me spill the beans. Here's my secret recipe, how I actually use this plugin. Let me just put that in bypass. Now, I'm going to monitor the side signals, and I'm just going to check to see what's happening 600 Hertz below. What information is there? Not how loud it is, what's actually going on there. Let's have a listen. It's actually well produced. The bass line moves down there. Some of the synth undertones are there. But what if we use this plugin here? And this is where the magic is. This stereo harmonics section. We take the mid signal, produce some harmonics in the side, blend it. The mono signal stays the same. And guess what? Magic. The best part, the technique doesn't mess with the mono signal. What I'll do is I'll just play it now with it in, and you'll hear the kick just spread out to the sides a bit. Now we'll stop monitoring the side signal and bring this in and out, and you'll just hear the mix go from the low end, just like this congested little spot, and then it just opens up this nice amount of depth to it all. The Sontec 432 by Metric Halo. This has become a tier daily driver for almost all my EQ tasks. And let me tell you why. It's all about simplicity and effectiveness. Find the frequency, change the width, gain up, gain down, shape the tone. With this plugin, there's no analysis paralysis. As great and as likewise it is to the Sontec 432, the analog unit, for me, it's more the fact that it's straightforward and intuitive. If I need a little bump in the lows to give the track some weight, bump in the lows, done. I dial it in, and when the highs are too harsh, like here the Diamond Saturator made the hats a little bit too harsh, I attenuated them. Simple. It's like you go from point A to point B seamlessly, quick, easy. Now just take a listen to this on the mix, and it's definitely doing a lot of the TLC and compensation for what the Diamond Saturator is imparting on the overall mix. Take a listen to this before and after. Just warming up the tone. Nice. Now, you've probably seen me use this 100 times across the channel for upward or parallel compression. Now, the reason why it lands on the A-tier daily driver isn't just because of its parallel compression abilities, it's the incredible control it gives me over each of the bands. So I can parallel process just the upper mids, just the lower mids, as much or as little as I want, and it allows me to reshape the dynamic tone of the mix in a very transparent way. Here's how you can think of it. Dyne 1 is the subtle and transparent cousin to the loud and obnoxious Diamond Dynamic Saturator. Two different flavors. This one is more about finesse. It's more about let's say you want to just get a bit of the subtle tone out of the upper mids in the vocal, or pull the bass band or the subs out just a little bit. You don't want to oversaturate or start adding harmonics. You just want to change the energy or sustain in that element. This can do it for you. Next one is the BX Digital V3. Unfortunately, it's falling in D tier meh. Now, don't get me wrong, I used to love this plugin 10 years ago, especially because I was getting into mid-side EQ. It was so new. However, the year's 2023, and there are far better options out there for mid-side EQ tools, especially EQs that include features like linear phase processing for mid-side matrices, more flexibility on the dynamic EQ side. This is pretty limited. Now, you might be wondering why I still use this though in mastering. Well, the answer is quite simple, and it comes down to one single parameter. I use it to increase the volume of the side signal. Simple as that. Sure, I can do it with other plugins, and no one does it better or worse than the other. However, I just know what 108% and 111% and 116% feels like or sounds like when I'm using this. Not that it has a tone or sound, I just sort of have an idea for how much I need to boost it using this. Otherwise, that's the only parameter that's getting used on this plugin, period. That's all I'm using on it. So, all right, next is Calvin Tone Shaper. Now, it's a C tier good plugin for mastering. It's flexible and great for creating unique saturation profiles. That's what I love about it. However, I find myself using this more in mixing, on basses, pads, and kicks. In mastering, it's either too subtle or it just doesn't give me the desired impact I'm after. Overall, it sees more work hours in mixing than in mastering. That's why it's a little bit low on the tier. Doesn't mean it's a bad plugin. It's just not one of my main daily drivers. Now, black box analog design, where does this fall for me? D tier. In terms of mastering plugins, it's not a bad plugin by any means. I personally found, though, that it compromises on the overall qualities I'm looking for in a mastering session, and typically those qualities include making sure the overall tonal balance stays extended in the lows as it needs to, remains as high as it does. This tends to shift the tone and the harmonics a bit too far for my liking in mastering, so it gets the meh tier. Alright, the next S tier plugin I'm going to share with you, most people wouldn't have seen this, is Simulate. This plugin is an absolute game changer when it comes to preparing vinyl pre-masters for cutting engineers. It's been a total lifesaver for me, and I can't wait to do a full rundown video on it. I've had it for a while now, from the beta when they were developing it onwards, and I've been meaning to. It's just such, like, the plugin is humongous, the capabilities of it. And over the past year, I've managed to finish up a few vinyl mastering projects for my clients, and let me tell you, the cutting engineers have been thrilled with the masters I've sent across to them. The vinyls have sounded great, and the reason is Simulate provides a complete simulation of the disc cutting process for my convenience. Now, one of the features that I find particularly incredible with this is the ability to meter the excursion, the width, the velocity of the groove on the playback, and actually visually get it represented here in a waveform. I haven't pulled anything in, so you can't see anything, but it allows me, when I've got one track to the next, to make sure everything's sort of sitting in a really similar pocket in terms of the way the cutting engineer is going to need to manipulate and use this. And you can even view the groove and see actually how a full cut across a whole disc would look like. The next is Standard Clip, and it is an A tier daily driver for me, namely Standard Clip. I also use Free Clip, which is also incredibly good. Mainly it's just intuitive layouts for a clipper. I don't really find many clippers sound much better than another one. And it's just the ability to go, okay, where am I clipping? And how much do I have to compensate on the gain? In, out, done. Now, Pro Q3. This bad boy is getting a solid B tier great rating. Now, let me tell you, it's a tool I rely on regularly. I don't use it as much as a Somtech 432 because not every track needs carving out and notches and dynamic EQ. And I really like the fact you can even use a linear phase on the side signal, which means that when you're using a mid-side EQ, that everything sums back together nice and tight. Now, don't get me wrong, it has an insane amount of features that could make it a daily driver for 99% of engineers, or life-changing for even some, but for me, I'm getting really solid mixes in, so I'm not using it all the time. But that said, it gets me out of a pickle. You go here, click here, where are we? There we are. Get a notch, there's a frequency you don't like, boom, it's out. Done. Pro L2, it's another fantastic tool, and I gotta give it a B tier grade listing. Now, you're probably wondering, there's the maximizer, that's life-changing. Everybody loves the Pro L2. I love it as well. I've done many videos on it. However, for most of my sessions, I'm gonna find myself reaching for the maximizer as my go-to. Now, when does the Pro L2 sound better? Now, here I'll give you an example. The maximizer, you gotta remember, the IRC algorithm is always recalculating attack and release time. So it's really good for most modern compositions where you've got verses, bridges, things are changing. However, let's say you get a 9-minute trance track. Kick, hitting the same, boom, boom, boom. A little synth comes in, throws out the calculation completely. So you start getting variances in the maximizer you wouldn't get in the Pro L2, where what you see and what you set is what you damn get. It does not change, which is great. So I think it has its use cases. I'm still using it. As much as the maximizer, not particularly so. Nonetheless, it's definitely an incredible tool. Definitely a great tool. B tier, great. I do deep dives on the ballistics of this attack module. So if you want, there's a link in the description, and we'll keep moving on. A few D tier and C tier plugins before we hit the final S tier plugin. Here's Nugan ISL2 True Peak Limiter. Guess where that sits? Guess where Nugan sits? D tier, okay? I got it when I was trying to figure out true peak limiting. I used it on several sessions, but the workflow never took to me. I never gravitated towards it. It was a bit clunky to use. I don't know why, maybe it was just at the time. Didn't enjoy it. Now, OTT, hailed in the EDM world, but horrible for mastering in my opinion, as it throws out the tone and phase of a mix completely. So D tier. MJUK was the cheapest replacement I could find for my Manly Varimu I have here just for some testing, and it's pretty faithful actually. It does a really good job. However, I'm preferring to use the Manly Varimu in my chaining limiting mode. It can't quite hit the mark exactly the same, so it's C tier good. It's not D tier, it's not bad by any means, especially the price difference. It does a very exceptional job, but landed in C tier, and we've got one more plugin, which is going to be our S tier one. Now, the final S tier plugin is my stereo width meta plugin I designed, which you can watch in this video here. Basically, it allows me to change the shape and tone of the harmonics in the stereo field without affecting or compromising the original mono compatibility. Click here to watch how I built this and how it sounds and how it operates in this video here. And until next time, take care.